The world held its breath. Not all at once, not everyone knew, but in certain rooms, in certain bunkers, people felt a cold fear. A fear born from a small mistake, a tiny error in a vast system, a typo, in a way. A misunderstanding of what was real and what was just noise. This small thing almost lit up the sky with nuclear fire. It almost ended everything. Think about the Cold War. It was a time of deep, deep fear. Two giant powers, the United States and the Soviet Union, stared at each other across the globe. Each had thousands of nuclear bombs, enough to wipe out the other side many times over. Enough to wipe out the whole world. Everyone knew it. That knowledge hung over everything. Kids practiced duck and cover drills in schools. Families built fallout shelters in their backyards. Where movies showed what a nuclear war would look like. It was a constant shadow, a quiet hum of dread in the background of daily life. Both sides built massive defense systems. Radars watched the skies, satellites orbited the Earth looking for any sign of attack. Computers crunched numbers, trying to predict enemy moves. The idea was simple: if one side launched missiles, the other side would know right away. Then they would launch their own missiles before their weapons were destroyed. This was called Mutually Assured Destruction, or MAD. It was a terrible name for a terrible idea, but it was supposed to keep the peace. No one would strike first, because they knew they would die too. But what if the system made a mistake? What if a computer got it wrong? What if a human misunderstood something? That was the real fear. Because these systems were so complex, they had so many parts, so many lines of code. So many people watching screens, and humans make mistakes. Computers can have bugs. The systems were designed to be fail-safe. They had many layers of checks and balances. But even the best designs can have flaws. Even the smartest people can miss something. Especially when the stakes are so high, the smallest error could trigger something huge. Something that couldn't be undone. Imagine being in one of those control rooms. The lights are dim. Screens glow. Maps show the world. Important people sit there, watching. They are waiting for something that they hope never comes. They are ready to act in minutes. To make a decision that would change history forever. A decision that would kill millions. They trained for this. They rehearsed. They knew the protocols. But nothing can truly prepare you for the real thing. For the moment when the alarms start to scream. When the lights flash red, when the computer says it's real, and you have to decide if it's telling the truth, or if it's lying, if it's just a mistake. A very big, very dangerous mistake. The people in these rooms had immense power. They held the fate of the world in their hands, and all that power rested on the reliability of machines and the judgment of a few people. That was the reality of the Cold War, a fragile peace. Always on the edge, waiting for the smallest push to send it all over the cliff. And sometimes that push almost came from the most unexpected place, not from an enemy general, not from a political blunder, but from a tiny, almost invisible error, a flaw in the system, a kind of typo in the digital brain that was supposed to protect everyone. It was September 26, 1983. A normal night in the Soviet Union. Deep inside a bunker near Moscow, a man named Stanislav Petrov was on duty. He was a lieutenant colonel in the Soviet Air Defense Forces. His job was to watch for missile attacks from the United States. He was the commander of a top-secret early warning center. His team monitored satellites. These satellites were designed to spot American missiles moments after launch. Petrov had a quiet shift. The screens glowed green. Data scrolled by. Then, suddenly, everything changed. An alarm went off. Loud, piercing. A single word flashed on the main screen: launch. Petrov's heart must have pounded. He looked closer. One missile, detected, launched from the United States, headed for the Soviet Union. This was it. The moment they had trained for, the start of World War II. His job was clear. He had to report it up the chain of command. The Soviet leadership would then decide whether to launch a counterattack. They had minutes to make this decision, not hours, not even an hour, minutes. But something felt wrong to Petrov. He looked at the data. He looked at the screens. Only one missile? If the Americans were going to attack, they wouldn't send just one missile. They would send hundreds, thousands, a full-scale attack. That was the only way MAD made sense. One missile was not enough to cripple Soviet defenses. It made no sense as a first strike. As he thought this, more alarms went off. Another launch appeared. Then another, and another. Soon, the screen showed 5 American missiles heading their way. The system was screaming attack. The other officers in the bunker were scared. They were ready to follow protocol. They report it. Get the orders. Launch. But Petrov hesitated. He still had that gut feeling. 5 missiles still didn't feel like a full attack. It was too few. It was a tiny number compared to the thousands they knew the Americans had. Why send so few? It seemed like a mistake, a setup, or just a problem with the system itself. The pressure was immense. Every second counted. He had to decide, was the computer right? Or was his gut telling him something important? If he reported it and it was a real attack, he would be a hero. He would have saved his country, maybe. If he reported it and it was a false alarm, he would look foolish. But if he didn't report it and it was real, he would be responsible for the destruction of his country. Maybe the world. He made a choice. He decided it was a false alarm. He decided to trust his own judgment. He told his officers it was a system malfunction. He called the duty officer at Army headquarters. He reported a system malfunction, not a missile attack. His decision went against the rules. He was taking a huge risk. He was going against what the sophisticated, expensive computer system was telling him. A system designed to be foolproof. And he was right. It was a false alarm. The Typo in this case wasn't a misspelled word. It was a rare alignment of sunlight on high-altitude clouds. The Soviet satellites, designed to detect the heat of missile launches, saw this sunlight reflection. They interpreted it as missile engines firing. A highly unusual atmospheric condition combined with a software bug in the satellite's programming created the illusion of an attack. The computer was programmed to flag anything resembling a launch. It did its job, but without the human context. Without the common sense that said, 5 missiles is not a full attack, a tiny flaw in the software, a misinterpretation of data from a satellite, a simple problem with the coding logic. This was the typo that almost caused a nuclear war, a tiny, almost invisible glitch. It showed how much we rely on technology and how easily that technology can go wrong, especially when the stakes are so high. And it showed how important human judgment still is, even in a world run by machines. And Petrov, in that moment, became the only thing standing between a computer's mistake and global catastrophe. He chose to believe in common sense over the flashing red lights. Imagine the weight on Stanislav Petrov's shoulders. The room was hot, even if it was cold outside. The air was thick with tension. Alarms shrieked. Lights pulsed red. Every screen showed the same terrible message: missiles were coming. His training told him what to do. Follow the protocol, report the attack, pass the information up the chain. That was his duty. That was his job. But something inside him said no, this wasn't just a technical problem. This was a human problem. The computer was saying one thing. His gut was saying another. And in that gut, a lifetime of experience, a deep understanding of strategy, and a powerful sense of common sense were fighting the cold logic of the machine. He knew how a real attack would look. Hundreds, maybe thousands of missiles, not 5. 5 was too few for a first strike. It was too many for a warning shot. It didn't fit any military logic. And a real attack would also be confirmed by ground radar. But the ground radars weren't picking up anything. They were silent. This was another huge clue. The satellite system was showing an attack, but the ground-based radar systems, which were a different set of sensors, were not. This contradiction was key. He had 2 pieces of information, and they didn't match. The machine was screaming. The other machines were silent. Which one was right? Which one was lying? Petrov had to make a choice in seconds. There was no time to call Moscow for advice. No time to get permission. The decision was his. He had to be sure, absolutely sure, before setting off the chain of events that would lead to a nuclear counterattack. He had to question the very system he was trained to trust. He had to doubt the technology that was supposed to be infallible. He had to trust himself, and that takes incredible courage. It takes an ability to step back, to breathe, to think clearly under unimaginable stress. Think about it. Every fiber of your being would be screaming to follow the rules, to do what the machine says, to not be the one who failed to report a real attack. The consequences of being wrong in that direction were unthinkable, but Petrov held firm. He looked at his junior officers. They were scared. They were looking to him for leadership. He had to project .com even if he wasn't feeling it inside. He had to make a decision and stick to it. He had to tell them what to do. It's a false alarm, he said. He told them. He told the person he called on the phone. He stuck to it. He gambled everything on his intuition, on his common sense, on the fact that even the best systems could have bugs. His judgment was the ultimate failsafe. He was the human firewall, the last line of defense against an automated apocalypse. He understood that sometimes the most sophisticated technology can be the most misleading. And sometimes the simplest questions, like, does this make sense, are the most important. Petrov's actions highlight something critical about our relationship with technology. We design machines to be smarter, faster, more accurate than humans. We give them incredible power. But sometimes they lack context, they lack intuition, they lack the ability to question the data they are given. They just process. A computer doesn't know that 5 missiles don't make sense for a first strike. It just knows it detected 5 heat signatures. It just knows the code says alert. A human, however, can put those numbers into a bigger picture. A human can look at the whole situation and ask, is this plausible? In that Moscow bunker, Petrov did just that. He refused to be just another cog in the machine. He refused to let a computer's mistake dictate the fate of the world. He stood firm. He trusted his gut, and because of that, billions of lives were saved. The quiet, everyday human choice in a moment of extreme crisis prevented a global disaster. It was a triumph of human judgment over mechanical error. The immediate crisis passed. The alarm stopped, the red lights faded, the silence that followed must have been heavy. Petrov had made his call. Now came the waiting, the slow, terrifying wait to see if he was right. If he was wrong, American missiles would soon be exploding on Soviet soil. If he was right, nothing would happen. The sun would rise as usual. The world would continue. And it did. Nothing happened. The world did not end. Relief must have washed over Petrov and his team. But relief quickly turned to a different kind of dread. The horror of how close they had come. How easily it could have gone the other way. An investigation began. High-level officials wanted to know what happened. They wanted to know why the system had failed. They wanted to know why their expensive, cutting-edge early warning system had screamed nuclear attack when there was no attack. The cause was found. It was, as Petrov suspected, a combination of a rare atmospheric event and a software glitch. Sunlight, reflecting off high-altitude clouds in an unusual way, created signals that the satellites mistook for missile launches. The computer program, designed to identify these launches, was simply doing its job based on the data it received. But the program had a flaw. It didn't properly filter out these kinds of natural light reflections. It was a typo in the logic of the code, a small miscalculation in how the system should interpret light. This was a major embarrassment for the Soviet Union. Their advanced defense system had almost triggered a global war based on a misunderstanding of sunlight. They didn't want to admit such a flaw to the world, so Petrov's actions were kept quiet. He was not officially rewarded. In fact, he was questioned for not following protocol. He was even reprimanded for not properly filling out logbooks during the incident. Imagine that, saving the world and getting in trouble for paperwork, but he also faced no serious punishment. The authorities recognized unofficially that he had made the right call, that his decision had saved them from a catastrophic mistake. He was moved to a less sensitive post. He eventually retired from the military. His story stayed secret for many years, only coming to light after the collapse of the Soviet Union. The incident forced the Soviets to look hard at their systems. They made changes to the software. They added more checks, they tried to build in more redundancy, they learned that even the most advanced technology can be fooled. And that human judgment, flawed as it can be, is sometimes the best defense. On the American side, similar near misses happened throughout the Cold War. There were incidents where a flock of geese was mistaken for incoming missiles. Or a computer simulation of an attack was accidentally loaded onto live systems, causing alarms to blare in command centers. In each case, human operators had to step in, question the data, and confirm it was a false alarm. These incidents on both sides served as stark reminders of the fragility of the nuclear peace. They showed that the systems designed to protect us could also be the very things that endangered us. The people who made these critical decisions often remained anonymous heroes. They were just doing their job. But their job sometimes meant literally preventing the end of the world. The aftermath of these false alarms wasn't just about fixing technical bugs. It was about understanding the human element. It was about recognizing that trust in technology must always be balanced with critical thinking. That no system is perfect, and that sometimes the simplest, most human act of questioning what you see can be the most powerful act of all. The lessons learned were harsh. The path to global destruction could be paved not by malicious intent, but by a simple, tiny mistake. A sunbeam, a flock of birds, or a single line of bad code. The Cold War ended. The Soviet Union fell apart. The direct standoff between two superpowers with tens of thousands of nukes lessened. But the threat didn't disappear, it just changed. Today, nuclear weapons still exist. Many countries have them, and the systems to detect attacks are still in place. They are even more complex now, more connected, more automated. Have we truly learned the lessons from incidents like the one Stanislav Petrov faced? We hope so, but the underlying dangers remain. The risk of a typo causing a nuclear war is still real. It might not be sunlight reflecting off clouds again. It could be something else. A cyber attack on an early warning system. A sophisticated hack that introduces false data. A rogue AI that misinterprets something. A human operator making a mistake under extreme pressure. Well, technology moves fast. Systems get more complex, the lines of code grow longer, the chances for bugs, for unintended consequences, for IPOs in the digital sense also grow. And the speed at which decisions must be made often shrinks. We are still relying on humans to be the ultimate fail-safe, to have the wisdom, the common sense, the courage to question the machines when something doesn't look right. But are we preparing people for that kind of burden? Are we training them to doubt the very systems they are meant to trust? The story of Petrov is not just a historical anecdote, it's a living lesson. It reminds us that peace is not guaranteed by technology alone. It is guaranteed by human judgment, human caution, and human humility. It's about knowing that even the smartest machines can be wrong, and that the most powerful systems can have the smallest, most surprising flaws. Think about the world today. Tensions rise and fall. Countries jostle for power. Misunderstandings happen. Information can be manipulated. In this environment, the chance for a false alarm, for a system glitch, for a typo of some kind to trigger a catastrophic chain reaction is always there. We build these huge complex defense systems to keep us safe, but those same systems with their hidden bugs and blind spots can also put us at risk. The very tools designed to prevent war can, in the wrong circumstances, almost start one. The world owes a lot to people like Stanislav Petrov, people who, in a moment of unimaginable pressure, chose to pause. Chose to think, chose to trust their gut. They remind us that for all our advancements, human wisdom, human skepticism, and human courage are still our greatest assets. The shadow of nuclear war has not fully lifted. It remains a quiet presence, and the story of the typo that almost caused it is a constant warning, a reminder to stay vigilant, to question, to remember that even the smallest mistake can have the biggest consequences, and that the fate of the world can sometimes rest on the sharp mind and steady hand of one person, making a call against the screams of a machine.